I swear I'm not orthorexic.
Just have an idea of how to improve a sequencer.
So, the typical analog sequencer, a bunch of knobs in a row. For each knob, it gives you a note.
Problem that I have with those step sequencers is that they're a little boring. It's just a loop of the same thing going over and over again. It certainly has influenced the way a lot of synthesizer music has been composed, but I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to make that step sequencer more of a function of my compositional choices. So the first idea that I had, instead of the static knob that controls the setting for each step, it was to have an LFO on the other side of all of the steps so that you get a melodic shape. Then I realized that the easiest way for me to put that together with my software was to use an LFO to control the step CV of a switch. Start from one input and spit out to 8 outputs. To me, there's a lot of clear benefits of doing it that way. They have a lot of tools to affect the shape, so it's actually kind of a really interesting way to make melodies. In retrospect, it seems like a very simple idea, but I just was very excited about it, like having an LFO drive a sequencer, kind of geometry-ish stuff. I don't want people to get too mad at me for talking about math in a dumb way, but it feels a little like geometry, so, you know, rage away. My shithead cat has found a way to knock over the fucking Christmas tree. What have you done? I love you unconditionally. First of all, for this rising ramp, I guess you would call it, this is basically controlling which of these outputs on this 1x8 switch is going to be triggered. You can see it comes out and it's lighting those gate triggers up in sequence. These are static triggers. They trigger the Boolean logic. So that means that if this happens at the same time as this, then that triggers a pulse. Just goes through a mixer. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 corresponds over here to 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we change it, you'll hear a little bit of difference. So these mixers control when the sample and hold samples from this LFO. And it's the same LFO that's running that ramp shape to the 1x8 switch. And then that's going to this quantizer. Basically what's going on here is that this is an incremental function, so that this input has a higher probability. That's the one that goes higher. And this input has a lower probability, and that'll make it go lower. Because this is that feedback circuit through the analog shift register. Program some of the resets in here. You should hear when it gets too high, it'll trigger that 2 on that 8x1 switch and then reset. The thing about this, so you can speed it the fuck up. Rising. Okay, there, and it resets and it starts over lower again. I hear no meaning in this. So back to the drawing board. Another week's worth of failure for y'all. Merry Christmas. I almost feel like what I should do at this point is try to take like the first few measures from Bach's Prelude in C major from the Well-Tempered Clavier and just try to extrapolate what's happening with it. It's just a ramp shape happening for 5 notes and then coming back down to like the midpoint and then raising for another 3 notes. Same shape, but just translated so that it's over the 2. Goes to the dominant, back to the tonic. All of the voice leading in that passage It's all separated by one scale degree. The bottom note goes C, C, B, C. The next one goes E, D, D, E. If you look at it that way, you can really map it like a shape being distorted by just scale degrees. So we're going to have to take the 8 steps of the step sequencer and individually modify each of them. What's funny is that I'm describing a machine that might play that Bach prelude. I'm sure I'll run into some issues with trying to make it play exactly that thing. Like the glaring one that sticks out is that in Bach the score is static and I'm using probabilities in order to say whether something goes up or down. I know I'm gonna catch some shit for, pissing on Bach's grave. I think I'm philosophically justified in doing what I'm doing. AI is definitely coming, and one of the crown jewels of human culture is music, and that's gonna be one of the biggest battlegrounds for AI, and it is gonna get shitty. The Discovery Channel, for instance, just announced that it's going to yank all the royalties for all the TV composers, meaning no more ASCAP money, which is about 90% of the money. But the point is that that's capitalism and music will not be spared. So hopefully this can be somewhat of a stalwart against that. If you have something that you control as a human composer, then you're going to do better. So I guess it's kind of a paradox that I'm seeking my human connection as an artist via making myself into a machine, essentially. If that's the biggest paradox you face today as a modern human being, that's a pretty good day. The other aspect, I think, is that it's just the biggest musical Hail Mary of all time. Well, I love composition, but by all accounts, I'm a middling composer. I'm not Beethoven, and I'm not just some useless dickhead. I'll bet that describes you too, if you're a composer. You're not Beethoven, and you're not some useless dickhead. Somewhere in between those two extremes. So, god damn it if I'm not just gonna try to be Beethoven for the rest of my life. Do it in the stupidest, most absurd way I possibly can. I hope that maybe someone finds it inspiring, finds some joy in life by thinking about something absolutely fucking useless. Think deeply about it. Doesn't matter if it needs an application. Well, I managed to create the first arpeggio in Bach's Prelude in C major in an LFO. Good start though, I didn't think I'd be able to do that. That's without the incrementing. That's basically just the LFO shape represented here. Going through this first quantizer, going through these set of quantizers, which is being controlled by this switch. What I have down here are the incrementers per each voice. These incrementers aren't working because each of these is on this second switch, which just gets a 0 out of this control voltage. This will not only reset it, but it will start these incrementers working. So it's still going to those different pitch sets, but now these are the overall shape that's coming through this first quantizer is being added to or subtracted from via these incrementers. And it gives it a gently meandering shape somewhere in the world of that Bach first C major prelude. Part of this approach is that you can do this, because it's modular. Quick reset.
I'd like to see Bach do that. Eat shit, Bach.
This has been Scott at the Noise Castle. Like and subscribe, share, comment below. Hit me up. As always, if you want to hear a higher fidelity version of the patch, just go scroll over the titles.